Hi, everybody. I can see that you're basking in the glow of your world premieres. Uh, Congratulations. Um, for those of you joining us from around the world, I'm Jeff Ruoff. I'm a faculty member in film and media studies at Dartmouth College. I wanted to begin by thanking our film and video technician, Peter Chardelli, for organizing the YouTube premiere and this webinar. So thank you, Peter. And welcome to this Q&A with the students of Video Mashups. Those of you who are watching can type in comments and questions to the chat section, and we'll try to incorporate those into our discussion. My plan is I'll start by asking each of you individually a question, and then we'll move on to a more sort of free-flowing conversation. So, Priya,
Yep.
your video powerfully exposes the wage gap between male and female athletes. Did you find yourself editing more to the beat of the music, or were the lyrics of the song also important for you?
I definitely edited more to the beat of the song, because the reason I chose the song is because it was so upbeat and there was a lot of like freedom for me to like have fun with the editing. So yeah, I didn't really at all like do it to the lyrics.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so, but did you know also from the outset that that song would work really well with your material?
Yeah, I know, because I remember when I like submitted that song, there was a lot of like comments like that it didn't really make sense that I was picking the song because it would be hard to kind of like the meaning wasn't there, but I just knew I was going to be including a lot of like cool video of athletes, and I wanted it to be like more upbeat and like allow for me to do a lot of like quick cuts and everything. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Okay, so Rob, your video very powerfully denounces police brutality and celebrates the Black Lives Matter movement as a cause for hope. And why was it important for you to portray the movement in that light?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from the start, I wanted to, one of my main intentions was I think in 2020, a lot of people, rightfully so, maybe are down on the way the world is looking. But I think, with the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of the protests we've seen specifically, like I personally think that this is a cause for, this is a great thing that's happening, and something that, as I tried to show in my video, has already led to some positive changes and hopefully will continue to lead to positive changes. So that was originally why I took that route. And I tried to show that there's obviously still so much work to be done as well, and show the problem and show how pervasive it is and how much injustice there still is. But I also tried to show that there have been positive changes, and hopefully more will be on the way.
Yeah, actually, this would be a question for both Priya and Rob. New technologies now allow people like us, to sort of speak back to the mainstream media, rather than just consume it. And so, do you see your videos as, sort of speaking back to the coverage of the different issues that you explored?
Yeah, for me, I definitely do. I think that's like a great point, because you always see people, especially for the wage gap, like I always see like people say, oh well, no one shows up to women's events and stuff like that. Like I tried to like take a lot of the things people said and then like look for things that like, okay, that's totally wrong, that's a misconception, and just try to like do something like that.
Yeah. And Rob?
Yeah, I try to look at some similar things. It's hard to cover, it's hard to, speak back to everyone, but one of the specific things was I tried to include like that portion on defund the police and the Black Lives Matter co-founder talking about what it actually means. I think that's maybe a misconception that exists in the media or in general with what defund the police means, and talking about how that means reinvesting into other services. And that was one specific instance where I tried to kind of maybe speak back, maybe clarify a misconception. But yeah, I think I was trying to do that with that part.
And then also, you know, the demonstrations get kind of misconstrued because the emphasis ends up being on the most, you know, sensationalist footage of the 1% of, you know, violent confrontations that happen.
Exactly.
Which is, you know, a subset of what's going on. So Ben and Sam, you two worked together, like Biden and Trump, to make a very funny mashup of the presidential debate. What were the most challenging aspects of editing this video?
I mean, I guess I'll talk because we split it up. So the climate change section and the healthcare section is what I did, and then he did the racial injustice section and the economy section. And so I mean, like for me at least, the hardest part at the beginning was like there are a couple times when Biden says things that are like absolutely absurd, like climate change isn't real and stuff like that. And the hardest part was like actually getting the audio to sound like he actually said it, because like the clips are just completely strewn about throughout the debate. Also finding the clips like an audio that's actually usable, because like you can look through the transcript and find times when they said stuff, but a lot of times like they're speaking so fast that it's not actually usable. So finding the audio and then laying it out. And then the other thing was kind of like avoiding those kind of like really harsh jump cuts by kind of like focusing on the other candidate's face or whatever. But yeah, it was pretty difficult to piece together, but yeah, I think it came out all right. And like, yeah, the hardest part was definitely the audio for me.
Yeah. And Sam, other than working with Ben, what were the hard parts?
Yeah, for me, the
kidding.
hardest the hardest part was probably smoothing out the footage, because like at the beginning for our first cut, it was like really obvious that we took the clips from different sections of the debate, so you could tell that it wasn't like realistic at all. But throughout like the next few cuts, I think the thing we overcame was like taking out all the jump cuts and putting in like creative transitions, whether it was like showing the other person's face or like using morph cuts or cutting to the moderator. So I think at the end it was like smoothed out a lot better, so that it actually looked pretty realistic in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw the other class videos, but there's one in which Trump debates Trump with Chris Wallace as the moderator. What other aspects of your your collaboration sort of come to the foreground?
I mean, just kind of like the thing we first did, like at least for me, is we both found like the transcript of the debate on ABC, and we just looked through it and we're like, okay, what can we make them say? And like the most fun part about like collaborating was kind of like coming up with like fun ideas for like things to make them say that obviously like go completely against what they're all like for, and bouncing ideas off each other and like, okay, can we actually use this? Does this make sense? But yeah, creating the script was the most fun part in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like at the very beginning, just like when we were like first piecing together, just like showing each other like what we came up with, it was just like really funny just to see like what the other person came up with and how like absurd it was.
Also, I have to add, this whole like kind of video concept was Sam's idea, and like I give full props to him for that. It was a great idea. So yeah.
And yeah, well, and it turned out really, really well. Zeke, you made a loving tribute to an outstanding soccer player and admirable Turkish-German guy whose ethnicity and religion have made him a controversial figure. What drew you to his story and the song that you used?
I think what drew me to his story was just, having followed him as an athlete and being a fan of his for, like over 10 years, almost as long as I can remember. And just sort of like the context of him and his situation, right now, which is there's sort of all these rumors swirling and uncertainty about, what is actually going on, which I sort of tried to convey by showing different perspectives. So that way the audience, even if they weren't super familiar, sort of gets that idea of, okay, it's not super clear and easy to know what's going on. I think in terms of the song, I felt like some of the moments of lyrics, it matched up well with some of the footage, and just the title overall really resounded with one of his most recent public statements where he accused, the club of a lack of loyalty.
Right, right. Yeah, I was actually going to follow up with a question about sort of the relationship between cutting to the lyrics and cutting to the beat of the music itself.
Yeah, I would say that when I initially was sort of thinking about it, there's like a lot more about the story that I would have liked to tell, but it was hard to, especially because a lot of the audience who would be viewing it aren't as necessarily familiar with him as a character as I am. So it was hard to include as much as I probably had thought about in the beginning, and in the planning stages, I structured it more based on the lyrics because of that. But as we worked through with the cuts and stuff, and I got feedback, I started to do more to the beat, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Uh, uh, and very well. Abby, it's quite remarkable that you had little to no experience making videos before this class. Hope you don't mind my mentioning that. In a collage of images and sounds, Indigenous Rising very powerfully evokes Indian identity and resistance. What was the process of finding the structure, specifically not only the images but also the quotes that you strung together?
Yeah, first off, shout out to Christian for kind of teaching me a little bit at first with our first pairing. He really drug me through that first project. But yeah, so I knew I wanted to do something around Indigenous identity. And there's a ton of groups of people that I love. I love their content. I love their stuff. There's somebody from Montana. His name is Superman. He has great content. He makes music videos. He's a rapper. And then the 1491s are also a comedy group whose content I watch all the time. And they just have a ton of specials with like spoken word. They even came to Dartmouth and they did a lot of footage on campus. In my video, there's a girl, she's dancing in front of the Dartmouth Tower. And I just think that's super powerful. So I just think that's a really cool shot. Yeah, so there's just a ton of groups that I've always been a fan of, and I was really happy to be able to play around with their content and see what I could do.
So in terms of the voices that we hear speaking, are they drawn from exclusively nonfiction sources or a mix of fiction and nonfiction?
Yeah, they're all fiction. They're all from 1491's video. So yeah.
Oh, wow. I would never have guessed. So as someone majoring in environmental engineering, do you see yourself making videos about Indigenous rights and other topics in the future?
Probably. I don't know. I don't know. I like taking this class. I found that it's like super fun doing. I kind of have a knack for it now. I've actually already made like a fashion video for the NADS, for the Natives at Dartmouth group, just kind of like playing around and having fun. So it's probably just going to be kind of with that. Maybe one day just being able to pair with Indigenous groups surrounding topics like sovereignty or food accessibility, because those are kind of my areas of interest, maybe something like that.
Great. Okay. So Charlie and Luke, Warhol's Superstars, beautifully revisits some pioneer queer figures from the 60s and 70s, and then draws a bridge to contemporary LGBTQ communities. What was the most challenging part of evoking this story in a 4-minute music video?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of information to convey. We really wanted to highlight all of their stories, but you know, they had pretty complex and long lives that we couldn't obviously fit everything in. But yeah, we tried to do that with the subtitles to show as much information as we could without making it too confusing or long-winded.
And Luke, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the song obviously helped us a lot as kind of a framework, but we definitely wanted to, as Charlie mentioned, tell a full story about all of these amazing icons. So we figured that adding subtitles would help, and also syncing up the footage to convey their stories and their narratives in a way that we weren't over telling the story. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you initially started out working on a completely different song. And you know, what happened with that? And then how did you end up collaborating, I mean, sort of logistically on this one?
Yeah, so our initial project for people who aren't familiar, obviously, was we took on Every Breath You Take by Sting, and we tried to use footage from Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street to make it more like creepy with the lyrics. The main problem that we faced was that we couldn't find enough footage of these movies online because of copyright issues. There were only maybe like 10 2-minute clips here and there. And a lot of the time it wouldn't be the right footage that we felt was up to par with what our initial vision for the narrative would be. So because of that, we ended up switching topics, and Charlie can speak to how we kind of came up with our new idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we wanted to make a music video, so I was just kind of looking through songs and found this one it's a song I've always really liked. And I've always kind of known like the lyrics were about these people, but I didn't really know anything about them. And as someone who's part of the LGBT community myself, I wanted to learn more about these people who have in some way indirectly impacted my life. So yeah, wanted to go full in on that research and tell their stories for everyone else.
And you did beautifully. Alana, your video Men of Dartmouth explores the college's dubious track record dealing with sexual assault since coeducation began. Where did you find the extraordinary black and white footage in your video?
So I was actually working on an English project my freshman year, and that's how I kind of ended up in the Ronner Special Collections digital library. And then I found specifically that one film project called Last Weekend. And I think for me, it was like it was kind of a narrative that I like had known, but I didn't know if I could really like make that story work. But I thought it was worth a try, like given just how well that video lends itself.
Yeah, very well. And Lust Weekend is a play on a famous Hollywood film called Lost Weekend, which was written by a Dartmouth grad back in, you know, the classical days of Hollywood cinema. And again, why did you want to address the issue of sexual assault beginning with coeducation and then through to the present day?
Yeah, I think that for me, like the narrative, like there's this, like Dartmouth has so much history just because the school is so old. And so I think a lot of times the way that we talk about like sexual assault now, it's like in relation to like some of the media and culture currently. But I think like for me, with relation to the school, it feels rooted a lot deeper than that. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Ileana, you brilliantly updated the film WALL-E to the present. What was it about WALL-E that gave you the idea to recut a movie trailer that highlights the mishandling of the pandemic in the US?
Yeah, so I always kind of knew like for the final project, I wanted to do something like with the movie. So I was like scrolling through Disney Plus and I came across WALL-E and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so relevant. Like literally WALL-E could happen to us right now, given like our current climate, especially with like the coronavirus going on. And I know WALL-E itself has to do with like climate change, but I wanted to take a spin on that and show how like different things like yes, climate change is extremely important and extremely real, but also like the pandemic and like the decisions we're making are affecting our world and affecting our environment. So I thought it was like really important and like really just like interesting how like that movie is so relevant, yet it came out like a long time ago, like in the 2000s. I don't remember the exact year, like 2007 or something. But yeah, it was like really interesting. And I thought like it just fits so perfectly with what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So this is a question we could talk about more generally, but I'll ask you, Ileana. Do you think that any movie could be turned into something else in a trailer and transformed into a different genre?
I think you can't, because it's like just creativity. Like you can take like different parts of it and like what we did for like our trailer assignment and just seeing like the variety of different genres that we had. It wasn't just like one type of genre people decided to do. We had like rom-coms, we had like different genres like that. So like that's really interesting. So I think it just takes like you just have to be creative and figure out like what kind of genre you want to do and then just find the clips. Like that's just the most difficult part, is like finding specific clips in the movie, because when you're like transforming it, you're not really looking for like the big clips, like the main important ones, but like the little ones that don't seem as significant.
Yeah. So Christian, why would it be the case that you can do what Ileana was just describing? That you could take any film and trailer it into something else? What is it? What does that say about editing and
I think that really speaks to just the power of found footage, and it's been displayed by the films that everyone's created in this class, and just the central premise of the course itself, which is finding footage from other sources and sort of like repurposing them and reinterpreting them for a new message. And in the case of the movies that she was just talking about, just the quantity of content that exists in like a movie as displayed by our trailer projects, and just the varying types of trailers, like the rom-com, the thriller, all the things that came out of it, I think really sort of speak to like what the actual purpose of this class is and what the purpose of found footage is.
Okay. So my next question's for Will and Christian. Your video, 2020 Humanity and Chaos, fuses strikingly the misguided US response to the pandemic with the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And I was wondering why, bring together these two particular aspects of our sort of collective American experience.
Well, I think that these are both like a certain form of pandemics, and one is old and one is new, like you said in the comment section to our videos. But these two things have been taking the nation by storm this year, and we just wanted to address them and also show some good parts, some humane parts that can be found within these disastrous events. I think they're just really important to understand and take a look at, and that was the goal of our film.
Yeah, and Christian, having shown those ravages, the two of you decided to end on a note of sort of cautious optimism.
Yes, so I think the original goal of our film was we were thinking about more showing moments of humanity throughout the entire year. But as we started to edit, it became clear to us it made more sense for us to sort of detail chronologically these two pandemics as we were talking about them, but then not let that be the ending of the film, not let the sort of chaos and sadness that we've seen sort of unravel itself this year. We really wanted to end on more of, like you said, sort of like a fairly optimistic, but also very cautionary as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like that speech, because he talks about like the inherent aspects of humanity that we all have, but he also says we've lost the way. And I feel like that's a pretty strong message to end with for 2020, as far as a lot of the things that have gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some more sort of general questions that have come in. And so I'll just I'll start with Priya. What was your favorite part, and what was the hardest part of making your video?
Okay, favorite and hardest part. I would say the hardest part was probably, actually my favorite part was definitely going through this footage, or all the footage that I got to do, and I got to learn like a lot about this subject, because like I knew about the wage gap, but I'd never like dove in like so deep into the topic and watched like all these videos and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the hardest part was probably trying to like display all this like these facts and information in like a way that would be enjoyable for people to watch, because I had like a lot of statistics, for example, that I wanted to show, but like I didn't want to just put on the screen and write the words, because I wanted people to like enjoy it. So that was probably the hardest part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Rob, what was your favorite part?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite part, I think, is connected to the hardest part, which is, I think one of the hardest parts is finding the footage. You have an idea of what you want your video to be and what you want. Okay, I want a newscaster to say this line, and then I want this and this to happen. But then when you go and try to really find that specific thing, it can be difficult, especially like you have to make sure that the audio is clear and there's no, the person who made the video that they posted doesn't have their own music in the background. There's a bunch of random challenges like that you discover. But when you find, a great clip that kind of fits with the story you're trying to tell, that's pretty exciting. And then obviously when you find a bunch of them and you're able to put it together into a full video, that's obviously really exciting too. So that was probably my favorite part.
Mm-hmm. So Abby, I'll assume your favorite part was turning it in as a finished video. So what was the hardest part?
I think the hardest part was just like finding the content. There wasn't a lot of, I wanted to bring in the old footage and new footage and kind of redefine the image of what Native American is and indigeneity. And I think just trying to relay that message in a way, just kind of keeping it fluid throughout, and then also keeping it diverse throughout the different ranges of indigeneity and different groups and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So, another question was, what was the creative process like, specifically when it came to including footage that was potentially triggering? How did you, deal with those kinds of issues? Lana or Will or anybody want to?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was a process of like trying to include enough to show, well, one, I feel like a lot of the footage around this issue, like just in nature, is triggering. And I think I wanted to include enough to show like people who aren't familiar with the issue, just like some of the things that like have happened on our campus. But at the same time, like not going overboard with that and like showing more than needs to be shown.
Okay. Yeah. So so Will, what was your favorite part?
My favorite part was going through the feedback process I really appreciated that because we went through multiple rounds of showing to the class and getting feedback. And I've done like film editing in the past, but I've never really had the opportunity to have other filmmakers look at it and critique it. And I think that really enabled us to improve the videos and get new insight that we wouldn't necessarily think about if we were the only ones editing. So yeah, I really like the feedback.
Yeah, great. Okay, so you know, when people think of film or filmmakers, they tend to think of actors and actresses, directors, maybe writers or producers. After taking this class, how would you describe the creative significance of editing? Luke?
Yeah, it's given me a whole new perspective. I knew that a lot of work went into editing, but I didn't know exactly what the work was or how intensive it was. So definitely being put through the ringer. Most of us in the class haven't had very much, if any, experience with this, with Adobe Premiere specifically, I guess. So yeah, it's given me a whole new kind of perspective on editing. I think that they're very underappreciated in Hollywood, and I think that should change.
Yeah, and Christian, what would you say about the power of editing?
I think this class has definitely been eye-opening for me because in the past, I've always associated like one of the most powerful aspects of the film to be like the story and the power that lies within like the storytelling aspect. But one thing that I've really taken away from this class is how you can like transform that story and transform that narrative through the editing, as was displayed by like all the different projects where the meaning of the film was derived from the editing itself and not necessarily like the media that you were using. And so it's definitely giving me a new perspective on how you can convey a powerful message to an audience with primarily using editing skills. So.
And Ileana, has the course and the work that you've done editing changed the way that you watch, you know, regular films and videos and television shows? And
yeah, it actually has. I was gonna comment on that too, if like you were gonna ask me, but I just started watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and I've been like paying a lot more attention to like the editing, and I think it's like more impressive, like the editing rather, like the acting of course is impressive, like the actress, she's amazing, but like just seeing like the different editing and the things that they like with the chessboard and things like that, it's just like really impressive to me. So I definitely have like a newfound respect for editors, especially when it comes to like movies, because like you really pay more attention to the actresses and actors rather than like the editing that goes on behind the scenes. But yeah, I've definitely like changed the way I like watch my shows now.
I actually watched about half of that series thinking that Kristen Scott Thomas was the young woman in the in the story. And then eventually I was like, gosh, you know, she's really been around for a long time, and they've just done an amazing job with her makeup. And of course she plays like the elderly governess of the house. So here's you know, other comments, you know, Ben, about sort of, you know, the influence of editors?
The influence of editors. I mean, so for our video, I don't really like know of a ton of people who have done like mashups like that, but on YouTube, in terms of like editors that kind of like influenced like what I wanted to accomplish, there are like a few YouTube channels where they and I mean like I can drop the names, but like some of the videos like aren't that appropriate, but like where they basically take clips and then they completely misconstrue the meaning, and I just like I think that's really funny, and so that's kind of like what I wanted to kind of emulate a little bit with this project.
Okay. So this is something that Will touched on, but Priya, what do you feel like you learned from your fellow students in the class?
Yeah, so I definitely, there's a lot of things that when I'm editing something, like when I'm editing my video, I watch it like whatever 50 times over, and I just don't notice a lot of things that I just like assume look good. So like let's just say for example, like I wrote in some word, I put some text in, and like I put it in and I've read it 100 times. I can tell you what it says by heart, but I didn't realize like when someone's watching it, they don't have enough time to do it. Like just a small thing like that people kind of give me feedback on that I don't realize. Because definitely taking like a third person perspective on the video helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. And were there, what about in your collaborations throughout the course of the term? What kinds of things did you learn from each other and from that process of wrestling ideas to the ground together?
So I definitely, through like all the partners we had, I think it was really cool because, you know, when you're working on a video with one other person, you're not used to it because you have one kind of way you're thinking the video is going to go and they have one way. So like kind of bringing those together and bringing the best of each other's good ideas together. And then like kind of, you know, everyone said like when they're working on a video together, someone does one part, someone does another, and you really have to like fuse that together to make it all feel like one video and not like just two separate films. So that was challenging, but like it was really cool to like learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Rob, do you want to speak to that also?
Yeah, I think for me, the most fun part about the collaboration process was after coming up with the idea and brainstorming, which was also really fun, like going out, kind of maybe doing our own thing, but under the umbrella of the same idea, and coming back, and the work that, we would produce would be totally different and totally great in different ways. And I remember like one example, we had a sound design project where we just had a film and we had to make the audio track for it. And we could kind of do whatever we wanted with that audio track, didn't have to align at all. And we had an idea for our project. And I remember we came back with 3 completely different sections, but they actually told a really interesting story. And it ended up being really cool. So I think just like having an idea, but then seeing what other people think of it or how other people interpret it, and just building off of each other's ideas was probably the most fun part of collaboration for me.
Mm-hmm. So, as much as any genre, video mashups, of course, are, made in the editing room. So, Will, how did your project evolve from sort of the proposal stage to the final video?
Yeah, I think this was the proposal was mostly Christian's idea. I kind of joined him at the very start, but he had already had a vision of the film. And basically, I think the only thing that we knew for sure was we wanted to do a starting sequence with the New Year's Eve clips, and then go to this title card with 2020. But then the rest of the film, we kind of figured that out in the different processes. And the hardest part was definitely finding a link between COVID and racism, because ostensibly those topics can seem kind of separate, even though they're happening in the same year. And originally, in our first version, the transition was very rough, and it never got to the point we wanted it to until the very last week. So it's kind of just like a give and take process. We were thinking about ideas and seeing what worked and what didn't, because you can't plan out the whole video and have it go exactly how you want it. And there's always going to be some things that get in the way.
Mm-hmm. So, Charlie, I'm wondering if you, as you're editing, get into a kind of flow or state where you're like so caught up in what you're doing that, time passes and you're not really aware of it. And then, you discover it's 3 hours later or something.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's kind of like a zone you get into for sure, where you're editing for hours at a time and you like don't even look up. I think also there's just so many like different like parts of it. Like you got to do like the titles and the music and find all the footage, and a lot of times you're finding footage on the fly. You realize you missed something, you have to go look for it. So yeah, I definitely think that that there's truth to that.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Zeke?
Yeah, I definitely found like while editing, time could seem to fly by, especially because just by nature of this course, the editing involved a lot of watching footage and sort of searching through to find something that would work, for all the right reasons. And it yeah, definitely made it so time could fly. And I really found myself enjoying and striving to find the right footage in certain places. But sometimes I learned that you have to settle and do what you can with what you have found, because you could search for the perfect
Right.
clip forever.
Right. But my brother reminded me recently that done is better than perfect. Sometimes.
I would agree.
Sometimes, for sure. Sam, what did you feel like you learned from your fellow students in terms of, the collaborations and, discussing films on canvas and then in class and so on?
Yeah, I learned a lot from like my fellow students because just like being able to like bounce ideas off each other, I found like really valuable. And like, because usually I guess like on a video, you wouldn't really think it's like something you can collaborate on that well. But basically from the whole collaboration process, I learned that like being able to do a video with someone else is like a lot better than doing it by yourself, because there's a lot of things that you might not think about that they don't think about, which will like make the overall product so much better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And okay, let's see. Yeah, Ileana, in terms of, your initial proposal and the final project, how did that evolve over the course of working on it?
Yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to do like something with WALL-E and COVID related. And I remember like my first, like it was just difficult like finding the right narrative. So like the different, like the rough cuts and fine cuts were like very different narratives. So like that was like kind of a difficult part. That's kind of like where it transforms, is making sure like the narrative of WALL-E made sense and still like was related to like current events with like COVID. So like that was like interesting to see like how it transformed from like my original idea of like relating it. And then also like another thing too, I know like you mentioned a lot, was like including audio from the movie. And like that was like also like hard for me to do too, because like if you've listened to WALL-E, like there's not a lot of dialogue. It's mainly like, that's like the creative aspect of it. It's just like the little sounds. You don't really have to like listen to the movie, you just watch it basically. So like that's why I chose not to include a lot of dialogue, because it just didn't really fit. But like I definitely liked adding the sound effects. So like that was something I wasn't originally thinking about, but adding like those little sound effects for my final one really is like how it transformed it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, great. So what is it that all of us would like to say to Matt Gannon, the TA, teaching assistant for this course?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A true pro.
What did you learn, Matt, from TAing?
I learned that really just about how much goes into editing. People forget how much it is to learn. So it's a lot for people who haven't done it before to get into. And it definitely helped me to reorganize my thoughts about my editing process. And even something as simple as like organizing bins was something that I kind of relearned and stuff like that. So I don't know, it was a learning process for me too. So a lot of fun.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Well, on behalf of all of us on screen, I want to thank Matt and our film video technician, Peter Chardelli. Thank you, Peter. And to all of you on screen, I'm really proud of the work that you did under unprecedented circumstances of the pandemic, among other serious challenges. You produced moving, politically engaged, humorous, and provocative video mashups, many of which address central issues of our current moment. So congratulations. And thanks to those of you off screen in the audience for your questions and comments. And together with Charlie Chaplin, let's try to live with the love of humanity in our hearts. So take care and stay well.
Thanks for everything.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Great to see you.